From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent? The man who lifts condominiums off his chest. Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. My name, and I've tried to do this intro 2 times before and it's not gone well, so forgetting the plugs, and we're going to go straight to the man himself, the Beach Bum, the original Rock, the magnificent one, and he's got a poorly shoulder at the moment. It's either Ricky Steamboat or Greg Valentine's fault. So who's to blame for your bum shoulder there, Don?
Well, I think Valentine's caused you all the aggravation. He's the pain. But actually, it was Steamboat. It was an accident with Steamboat, little movement. I think it was New Haven Coliseum. And just we hooked it and caught my deltoid when his arm was and just pulled it down and pulled the rotator out. It's been like that for years. So it's I don't know what I did to it, and then I redid it.
Is it just like
something else stupid?
Was it just like an arm wringer that he gave you? Just like a simple arm twist and
Yeah, it was. The arm was out. It was up, and it was then like a hip toss. And so he stopped it, and then he had his hand, put both hands on my deltoid, and came up with the legs on the other side to scissor my other arm, and take, and that's when he had right at the joint there, and click. Because I was using blades for the next 2 months every night.
So we'll say Ricky Steamboat caused the original injury. And
well, that's the one where I had it already when we went to hang him. When Fuji and I, we tied and I was straining to throw him over the top rope there. It was just recently it recently happened because I couldn't. That's all I could think about when we were doing that angles is getting him, being able to lift him over the top rope. Because my shoulder was gone, I couldn't. I had no oomph there to boost him. But every guy, he was light. He was light. We got him over, but it was a futile attempt.
I think with if Ricky Steamboat saw Mr. Fuji in the corner smiling at him, sort of like handling that cane, I reckon Ricky Steamboat was going to be pretty light on his feet getting over those ropes.
Yeah, everybody, but Fuji talking. You told me about Tito. How easy, we always had, and we did. Tito was a dream, but the times he would get confused when Fuji and I would speak pidgin English, or mostly Fuji was, just trying to keep up with Fuji, and he had a hell of a dialogue.
Fujianese, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to get into the news now, and you already know what the news is because I've sort of discussed it with you beforehand. 2 bits to go on, and one is probably a week ago from when we're recording now. This is Monday, the 27th. The death of Stu Schwartz, a Florida regular referee. He died at the age of 90, and you remember him pretty well.
He was legendary. Oh yeah, I spent quite a bit of time back and forth in Florida, and he was. I suppose he was like the lead referee. He was he was a good guy. And he was with the boys, and he was around he married a lady wrestler. I think Shirley Lee or something. He was married to a lady wrestler, and stayed. Whether he worked at all, I don't know. He was a good sized guy. He was a athletic gentleman. So I don't know. Maybe he just, I don't know if he had a secondary job but he was on the road all the time. Of course, in Florida, you could be home every night, work every day, and then travel and suffer the rest of the week.
He's
a good guy.
Sorry, with the referees, I will ask you a couple of questions about referees and what makes a good wrestling referee.
Oh, he's got to have the timing, it's hard to say anymore because everybody just does whatever they want to do right in front of the referee, and they just middle the referee now. We had the Wally Tatsumi over here was a great one. He never saw anything. His back was always he was always turning, he was always looking the wrong way at the right time. Never. And not to take. They start on you, but somebody that'll stay strong with you. I'd start something and I'd be, I'd get somebody to get the better of me, and I'd, belittle the referee. Then I'd get to a point I'd tell him, I'll go after me, and read me the riot, right? And he'd just jump all over me. But yeah, somebody's, that they're involved in the match, that's involved with the, working.
Which was the best referee that you knew of that could watch your back as far as maybe a fan trying to run into the ring and they, tackle them or spot them early?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I could say, Wally Tatsumi, the first one from here in Hawaii. Sonny Myers, Stu was good. Stu would have watched your back. Who was the rest in WWE? Stamp and Bachwick, those guys for AWA. George Godasky was a rugged guy. He had Vern's ring for a long time. He took the ring all over the snow and stuff. Generally, a lot of the referees, were pretty decent. Some guys, were just commissioned guys and didn't have any, and a lot of guys were ex-wrestlers, so it just depended.
Yeah. Did you have any referees that had legitimately no idea what wrestling really was, or they didn't realize it was a cooperative thing and was treating it as if you were killing each other?
Maybe earlier when I was, but in the late part of my, the latter part of my career after the first couple of years, and all the referees were involved because it was pretty much big time. They're instrumental in a lot of big time angles or finishes or matches or whatever. They're usually pretty instrumental in something that's going on. You need a referee that's aware of something, that's not walking around, doing something on his own while you're trying to get some point across.
And I've got to ask as well, the best referee ever.
Jeez.
Was it Rita Marie?
Rita Marie. Oh, that's the one that Vince the alleged Vince raped her in the car.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
She wasn't around for long. She was Danny Davis. There you go. There's the name from. Yeah, Danny Davis is a hell of a referee. Good guy. I like Danny too. Yeah. Hang around with him. Yeah, there you go, Danny Davis.
There we go.
Godasky was good. Godasky was good. There's a couple on Fritz. Larry Williams. Pat lived with Pat and Louie out in San Francisco, and he was an ex-wrestler, and he just turned into a referee. There's
too many to name, then, shall we say? Or
yeah.
Okay, then.
Jersey Joe Walcott, when I was young, first started, the boxer.
Oh yeah.
A couple guys. I had a couple special. I remember Jersey Joe. Not too many else. Referees. They didn't sell too many tickets.
No. Fair enough then. I'll give you the next one then. The next piece of news. I didn't actually realise the latest is when we're recording Dark Side of the Ring about Chris Kanyon, but the one I did watch today, and you've already watched as well, The Plane Ride from Hell. What did you think of the entire documentary? What were your takeaways from it?
Oh God, you can't leave a plane on the runway there for 7 hours with carts loaded full of booze and expect that, good Lord. that's frightening. Something like that. With all the things flying around, you don't know, what the hell you'd go through. It's like that North Korean one with Inoki going to when they went to North Korea. Have you seen that one?
No, I've not seen that one. You have to tell me.
Well, they went. Inoki booked a tour with the president, the head. I guess maybe the Kim Il Jong, the first one, the father.
Is it Kim Jong-il? The middle one with the little glasses. Yeah,
that's the son. But when the father was there, Inoki booked was it one or two shows? Anyway, they went there and it was like 90-something thousand people, 100,000 people, and they're all required to attend the match. They had no idea what they're watching, nothing, Guys were going out getting heat and then screaming in English, you guys suck, and nobody knew what the hell they were saying. And the matches didn't get over, nothing happened, everything died. And then the guys there were getting, I guess different guys had attitudes and stuff, not realizing they're locked down in a communist country. And, they could have been drawn and quartered at any moment, and it's just the thinking, put yourself in there. God, what attitude would I have, if I showed up and some, these boys like, I think John Nord, he was, or Scott Nord, one of those guys, they were, they weren't making trouble. They were just, obsessed with the whole, the functionality of the whole scene. And they were, and I guess one of them, they got real aggro, these little dictators, it just doesn't work, and then there's hundreds of soldiers, thousands of soldiers with rifles and guns. And you're sitting there with your wrestling bag and your face paint, Oh God, that was just to imagine, what state of mind you would be in, if you were there. If you could just go and sit in your room like Yoda, and just not take part in anything. Flair ended up saving everybody's ass. Flair went and he worked a big long match with Inoki, and I don't know what kind of money these guys got, but it had to be big money, or hopefully to go to North Korea. But Flair saved him. He went 45 minutes, an hour with Inoki, and they got Inoki's hand raised. Yeah, 90-something thousand people, 120, I don't know, some ridiculous amount. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to be there.
It's probably a nice break from them all having to clip their lawn with scissors or whatever they're forced to make them to do. Going back, well, do you know what I was going to say? Well, overall, what do you think of the plane ride from hell, and does it compare to any you've been on with a bunch of wrestlers?
No.
Oh.
No, I with Kurt and Brock Lesnar roaring around there. And then who was it that cut Michael Hayes' X-Pac?
X-Pac, yeah.
Cut his ponytail, and he just went and hit somebody in the head, didn't he? He was drunk. Some guy was bleeding, and he went and hit him across the head. Yeah.
I actually interviewed Mike Chioda, the referee, and not too long ago, and I just randomly happened to mention Plane Ride from Hell for whatever reason I did. And I said, "What did you see?" And he went, he's got the deepest voice, he went, "Nothing, man. He just said he just had his hat on, his glasses on, I just head down, didn't want to know, didn't want to see, didn't want to witness anything, because he just saw where it was going, and it was like, I'm checking out of this situation." I'll tell you what, we shall go, since we had a slight power cut there, we'll go on to the main thing, the AWA Part 2 that we didn't get to. I was supposed to do it like straight afterwards, and then we just ended up doing a load of different stuff as well. So we're going to go back to the AWA Part 2 with all the questions I'd written from a month ago. And the first one, speaking of Dark Side of the Ring, does, of course, involve Ric Flair in both AWA training as well as the Dark Side of the Ring. This horrible segue. Anyway, the point is that did you train Ric Flair in, I think, 1972, or have a hand in training him at that point?
Well, he was one of the guys out at the ranch, out at the farm there. He was with Flair, Bruggers, Patera, Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, and Iron Sheik. 6 of them, yeah. 6 guys. Billy Robinson was training him. And I was kind of like Robinson's gopher, so I was, I'd go out there with Billy, work out, and I didn't have anything to do in Minneapolis. So that was, escape for me. But yeah, he was there. He was into it. He was a big fan of Dusty and Dick Murdoch. Pick him up at the airport, drop him off. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
He weighed the same as him as well. He like weighed the same as well. Did he have brown hair at the time as well? Still.
Yeah, mousy hair. He was about 310, 320. He was a big boy.
I'm trying to think. So how long would the people be training there before they got the first proper match in and was maybe on the road with the AWA or wherever they were farmed off to?
Yeah, I don't know. A few months anyway. It'd be a long time before they'd even smarten them up. They'd like I said, they just take them out there and do calisthenics till they bleed. Then they'd have, some old time hooker come out and grab them and stretch them. And then they go through, the Beals across the ring, and Beal bump, just a series of, so probably a couple months of that before they even got into any working, any actual in the ring work that you'd actually be doing. But they came out, they were all safe and all know how to take care of themselves, all good bump takers and stuff.
With the training initial class that you were training, you must have had maybe like an internal ranking of who you thought was going to make it, who you thought maybe wasn't going to make it so much. Where did Flair go into all that? And, like Patera and Sheik and the rest of them.
Well, Flair definitely had the attitude. He was gung-ho. Greg, Jimmy Brunzell, he was pretty good. Bobby Bruggers was an athlete. He was an ex-pro ball player and a friend of Owen McDaniels. And he seemed to, maybe not as much color. Patera was a character. You could see the least successful you think would be the Sheik because of his, which was, far from the truth, exactly the opposite. But you think because his connecting and his amateur background and, just his attitude, the third world attitude. You'd think that he would, but eventually he got with it and became one of the biggest heels of all time. But just, timing was perfect with the Ayatollah, and Iran, and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, he still had hair at the time. He wasn't I don't think he was quite as big.
Oh, what
no
an
mustache.
He was what an athlete he was. He was about 190 pounds, 95. Minnesota Vikings, their football team, they used to train at work out a lot at his health club, and he'd beat everybody at the university too. He beat everybody in racquetball or you name it. He was just a fantastic athlete, quick, and that was before Murdoch and Rhodes got him on the years.
He took to Western culture a little too well.
Oh yeah, he really, started drinking beer, never stopped.
Did he? When did sort of his like natural personality start to come out, Sheiky's?
Oh, he got down around Florida, Georgia, down in the South there. Obviously when the whole Iran thing started coming down, when it got so easy, he didn't have, and he just didn't have to do anything. He was hate, he just show up in his pointed toes in his pants, and people just hated him regardless of what he did. So that heat just carried him over the top.
Do you remember what the? Because I don't. There wasn't an upfront fee, was there, for that training camp? Unlike probably a lot of others, but didn't Vern get like some percentage of their contracts for so many years? Do you remember what that was?
No, I don't know what it was, but I think everybody was, everybody was probably different, because obviously Greg wasn't kicking back, I doubt.
No.
But everybody else, everybody else went out to pretty good territories. Went out to went around. So a lot of them went to Kansas City and Oklahoma and stuff there with McGurk and Watts and Bob Geigel down there. So they were on the road, boy. They went right on the driving. So most of the guys from there went straight to Kansas City or the other one I said Oklahoma territory. I think Greg stayed home. I don't know. He may have gone out for a couple of months, but I don't think he was pounding the road anywhere for $300-400 a week.
No, probably not. It might have done him some good to stay. Like the old David Sammartino would have done him better to not be in the WWF straight away. Maybe make a name for himself somewhere else, or change his name and do it that way. I don't know. Maybe that would have benefited Greg as well. Do you think, or trading off the name in AWA was probably the best way for him to go?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the easiest way for him to go. He's never interested in steroids or, putting a, great amount of weight on. He was a good worker, He just, was real lean. So he never, so yeah. It was his fire engine anyway. It was his toy anyway to play with, So he was in the office and, no reason. He went out for a little bit, probably went out for a little experience, and then came right back to the doghouse,
I'm going to move on then. And what was the very first AWA feud that sort of brought you from somewhere in the middle of the pack to at least the semi-main event where you started becoming a bit of a money player?
Ivan Koloff. When he was building him up for, they went in stages. They brought him up. I think he'd won the title from Bruno then.
Yeah, by then, that would have been like 68 or something maybe.
So he'd already taken the title from Bruno. So I was getting ready for Billy and Vern, and the other top echelon baby faces, and just working with Ivan, you had to be, if you weren't great, you just didn't belong in the ring. He was so easy, just the stuff he would do. And so I remember, just not even knowing when I just rocking some buildings, just blowing the roof off of, and I didn't even know what the hell I was doing, just following, just getting in the passenger seat and following him. I remember tearing down some, it was a long time ago, so I remember tearing some buildings down. I think I went over. He got DQ'd for something. I got my hand, Moline, Illinois, and the place went insane. When he was that hot, and the Russians still, was the, oh gosh, what was it, 74, 72? The Russian thing was just, the Russian thing was on fire. So just working with him.
Yeah, I know obviously you wouldn't have hung around with him in public, but are you aware that Ivan would just keep the Russian accent all the time? He'd never break character, basically.
That I imagine if he got in a pub, and where people knew where he was and stuff, he kept it up. Otherwise, he's a real soft-spoken, quiet guy. Yeah.
Someone else that you also had a big feud with early on in AWA was the Big K. Now, when we spoke about a month ago, I got Big K mixed up with Gene Kiniski. No, I'm sorry. Killer Kowalski.
Walter
Kowalski. Yeah, so there's Walter Kowalski, and then there's the other
Killer
Kowalski. Yeah. So Big K, I don't know anything about him. Please enlighten me.
He was Stan Kowalski. He was a good hand in the Midwest there. He and a fellow named Tiny Mills, which I know nothing about, but he was a good sized guy. He was, probably when I was with him, he was, kind of heavier. But when he was younger, he was like 6'3", 6'4", approaching 300 pounds, in good shape, good good worker, good psychology. He was Ivan's manager. So I kind of, he was Koloff's manager. So that's how I got into a little feud with him. I got, he was responsible for, did some minute comeback on Ivan, and I was doing that baby place. So I was using airplane spin for a finish. So I cut Ivan up and started to airplane spin him, and he reached in and I don't know if he grabbed with his hand or a cane or something. He tripped me and I fell on my face with the Koloff on my shoulders, and that's all. Otherwise, I would have beaten that dirty Russian. That's how Ivan. So I had something going with both of them, which I was lucky. It was a great learning tool for me. One guy was experienced and easy and slow, methodical, and then Ivan was go. So it was yin and yang. It was a good. I was lucky to be in a program like that.
How do you have a manager in the old territory days that's like almost half a foot and way bigger than the guy they're managing?
Well, Ivan was solid. Ivan was still 300, still in the threes there. So he wasn't that small. And Big K, he wasn't that type of intimidating look. He was good size guy, but a little wide in the hips. Not a fat stomach, but a little bigger in the midsection and stuff than your normal wrestler at the time. So, but still, like I said, yin and yang. One slow and methodical, and Ivan just boom, boom, bang, bang all the time, which was cool too.
Yeah. I take it this was definitely the time before entrance themes and such. But man, if he started doing that, like Nikolai Volkov did the Russian national anthem, God, if Ivan had done that in the early 70s, I'm sure he'd have been shot.
Yeah. Russians had a good heat there.
1972 and 1973, you would wrestle Dusty Rhodes in countless tags and singles. I suppose Dusty Rhodes sort of like the difference between what I would have seen when I had all the videos of like 1990 and son of a plumber and hugely charismatic. I mean, what made heel Dusty Rhodes the bad guy? So what were the differences between early Dusty and later Dusty?
Not much. He's already wanted. They already wanted him. He already had that. He had that quality about him. He was tagged with Murdoch, and he was a rugged guy. And I was a 225 pound baby face, and most of the guys were my size. So it's he was a big rugged guy, close to 280, 300 pounds, and if not for that time, interviews would have turned him probably even sooner than that, babyface. As soon as you saw, he was one of those guys, destined to be a singles performer, the Outlaws with Dick, and he was just destined to be a singles guy. That promo, like you said, Superstar was doing it one place and Dusty was doing it. I don't think either of them ever played off, maybe learned from each other, but I don't think either was copying it. And They say it came from Thunderbolt Patterson, but that was Thunderbolt when he was down in Florida, and Dusty didn't go to Florida till after Minneapolis. So Dusty had pretty much had his own route. Where he got it from, I don't know, but he was always it was always hard. It was working with him was kind of a little hard. Getting good heat, even if you're real skinny baby face, like I almost was. people, he was right on the edge there. And if you didn't get some good heat on you, you wouldn't have. If you didn't do some good healing on you, it'd be hard to have a real good match.
Are the stories of him and Dick Murdoch painting the town red? Apart from, they even got the mule, riding a mule into a bar thing in the film The Wrestler, which after we were talking about films, I actually watched the entirety of The Wrestler, and they even got that into, just to mention it. Were the stories of them just, going crazy on the town exaggerated, or as far as you knew, they basically lived up to, the legend?
So I don't know. But if the story's worth telling, it's worth juicing up a little bit. So probably a little, But yeah, they were drinking, fighting, raising hell. The old Texas boys up in the Midwest, up in the cold there. They they were having a good time. How true they were, the mule story I know is true, and different bar fights and stuff that they were in, I hear was true. I was never there for any of that stuff, but there would always be conversation related to that.
I don't know if you hung out with Dick Murdoch much in the AWA or maybe other territories. You probably hung out with him more in the WWF when he was teaming with Adrian Adonis. Do you have any particular Dick Murdoch stories? I don't know. I think one that's really famously going around was that they wanted the NWA board of directors wanted him to be the world champion, and then when it came time to him to prove that he could be trusted, he just did the silliest match he could, and then they just decided to go in another direction.
It could be. He was a great worker. He was one of those guys. He was out of his father was the world champion, I believe. NWA or something like that. Frank Murdoch, and he was as good. Yeah, he was as good as a worker, but he could do silly stuff too. I heard he worked 5 minutes with somebody hit him with an orange in Japan, and he took a big bump from the orange and dropping elbows on it and stuff. He could get crazy. But even he could just go all night long and never get tired, One of those guys. Get good heat. I was around Murdoch a bit in AWA and stuff. Different hotels and stuff. Get away. And he was cool, He was just in Japan. I was with him in Japan a couple times. And he was always, he'd go with the Japanese guys, stay all night, drink beer all night long. Just drink, that was his badge of honor.
Yeah. Keeping a low center of gravity so they couldn't throw him over the top rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who would you prefer to work with if you had your druthers for the rest of time, Dick or Dusty?
Well, I worked a lot with Dusty I was the heel. And that was always, that's easy. That was like Hulk, And Murdoch, if you just want to get in the ring, with a, and have a good match or great, a busy, productive, good match, it would always be Murdoch, But I guess Dusty, more money, more future, more. More creativity with him. I did a lot of stuff with Dusty. I'd hit him with the ether, the can of paint, and I did a lot of stuff up around Jacksonville. He was always, I used to see his elbow in my dreams coming down on me.
Did it hurt?
Him and Abdullah.
Did the Dusty Rhodes bionic elbow actually hurt, or was it never got near you?
No, never. It's when he landed on you with that fat ass. But the elbow wasn't that bionic.
But the fat ass was bionic then.
Yeah. He was easy. They were easy. Working with Dusty was like working with Hulk. Basically, your start, your middle, your finish, and then your end. It was, he did all those hours with Harley and Flair and stuff. But everybody else, the regular, Ernie Ladd or me or the Assassin or Missouri Mauler, whoever worked with him, when he was babyface, backside, it was just the same thing. Start off, and he's doing all, his slick stuff, and then get some heat on him, inevitably he'd get some color, and then go into whatever you're doing for the finish. There was not a lot to digest, but it's entertaining and, filling in the spots, filling in all the blanks there, but, it's normally entertaining, or exciting anyway.
And filling your pockets as well. Filling your pockets as well.
Yeah.
Right, I will move on then. And one of your sort of like infrequent tag team partners was Billy Robinson. You mentioned him before. I hear that Billy was a terrible driver.
Terrible what?
Car driver.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe later. He was married at the time. Had a young son. Had a German wife. Third rail, boy, was she strict. Ulla, beautiful German lady. He was married to. I don't know how the hell. She looked like a real classy, upper crust, upper class woman, lady, athlete, everything, athletic, German, real, Frauerbraun,
Stern,
Sauerbraten, whatever. We're real. She's a hard woman, attractive lady, and how the hell her and Billy ever got together, I have no idea. But
star-crossed lovers, maybe.
Yeah.
Was Billy brought to America by Lord Blears?
I don't know the exacts of the, all the particulars of that. It was Lord Blears that closed the deal for him going to the AWA. Blears was booking the Japanese. As much hatred as he had for Japan after the war and stuff, he was so tremendously loyal. It was incredible. And he and Fred Blassie and a couple other guys were really, had come from the Ricky Dozan era, the tape you sent me, the Ricky Dozan, and had transgressed into running it with the Ricky Dozan's family, Baba, and that era. So obviously they're English, and Tally, loved being in a British, loved, meeting, with his countrymen. So he, I'm sure from Japan, he developed a rapport with Billy, then brought Billy over here to Hawaii and got all his paperwork and everything else straightened out. And then evidently set up the trip with Vern, to bring Billy into the AWA. And luckily I was a casualty of that whole manipulation. Right place, right time. I got to straggle along. What happened was Curtis and Mark Lewin wanted to take me out to Australia, and Tally-Ho knew, how Curtis and those guys operated. It's like, it was Vietnam era, and they had no holes barred. They just and I think they're going to give me $800 a week. And this is like early 70s, 72, which was great, fantastic, unbelievable money. And Tally-Ho got wind of that, Australia, and he was always my mentor. He got me. He's the one that got me over with Vern to AWA, as opposed to going to Australia. Might have changed my life forever.
Yeah, well, you didn't get much of a tan, I suppose, in Minneapolis, as you would have done in Australia.
No.
What's the story about Billy Robinson's eye? Did you ever hear what happened?
Several stories. Yeah, he's cockeyed like an owl. One is Peter Maivia. He first, the Rock's grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when he first went to England from Samoa, from that, I don't know if he came the sumo route or not, but I know he went to England for the training and stuff. So evidently Peter was around 200, 210, and going to Wigan and all the, didn't have a big wrestling background, being Samoan, just no instruction, no anything else. So I guess Billy was pretty rough with him there, and as they all were, but he learned. Then he went away, and then he came back to England, and that's where he started. He was about, this time when he came back, he was about 280, 285, and it's like the Hulk Hogan, Billy Graham stuff. If you train a dog to fight, it's a pretty, and it grows up to be a great big dog, and it's a mean dog, it's going to be a hard dog to beat. So one story is that he and Billy got into it, and Peter took out one of the eyes, and in a fight. And another story is that Billy wrestled in the sand pits in Pakistan. They have these sand pits. Yeah, they came when we were WWF. When we were the UAE, the guy would come around with his entourage, and like we wanted to go wrestle sand pits or something. Another story was that Billy got an infection from the sand wrestling, because he would go all over the world, shoot matches and stuff like that, and wrestle all kinds of guys, amateur or professional setup matches or whatever it was. They weren't easy. They weren't cakewalks anyway. It's not like going to Nebraska, come into London and working with Flair. Wasn't anything like that. It was really wrestling your local hometown guys that wanted to look good, and wanted to look good. So yeah, the other story is he got the other eye. He got an infection in Pakistan in the sand pits. What is true? Leah Maivia asked, not Leah, Atta, Rock's mom asked me. I said, no, this is true. My dad pulled out. I said, I don't think so. I think he. So I gave her the sandpit story, but yeah, and then I remember Peter talking that he got back to when he got back to London. It was a different story.
I'll fill in slightly here because I actually researched this for the Rock book that I wrote. Billy Robinson said it was a fight in Japan. Wherever this fight happened with Peter Maivia, it was definitely in Japan in the 60s. The old story is that he pulled his eye out or damaged his eye during a fight. He got a thumb right in the eye. Billy says that he was blind in one eye from about the age of 10 because a child had thrown like a metal sign, like a frisbee, and it hit him in the eye and blinded him. That's the story he gave. And also he said that he beat up Peter Maivia and not the other way around.
Okay.
that's very much one man's side of the story on at least the fight. Just a couple more things about Billy then. Temperament, ornery, would you say?
Could be. Generally, it was a pretty jolly kind of, always kind of to go back at you like an English type personality, limericks and joking, and he was always, kind of doing some goofy stuff. But he tried maybe too hard to be, likable or like to be friendly, and then he would. I don't think he ever went out of his way to be a pain in the ass to anybody, or he was always, but he could, I seen he could get there.
Hmm.
He
With Billy, there's also quite a lot of stories that when he wrestled with people, sometimes he may sort of exert his will on his opponents to just let them know that he was the real tough guy. Any particular examples or any wrestlers who may have got on the wrong side of him and he basically sorted them out in the ring?
No, not that, the Sheik and at Burns camp and stuff like that. The stories he couldn't turn the Sheik over and stuff like that. They go back to, but the times I was around him, he was always, consummate pro for everything he did.
And one more actually, sorry about Robinson, is why was Nick Bockwinkel chosen really as Vern's successor rather than Billy, do you think?
Probably control. Yeah, Nick was a fabulous heel. His interviews and his interviews were unique. His work was unique. And then with Robinson, like all those guys, we were talking about Superstar before. One of those guys get in a position of control. You don't know if you're going to get the belt back or not. They may choose not to, to pull it like Vern supposedly offered the Sheik $100,000 to break Hogan's leg. It just something you never know. They may take the belt and say, no, I want more money. I want, they can hold you up. It seemed like Nick was more of a businessman and smarter, and and the less possibility of him running off track.
So trustworthy. We'll go with trustworthy then, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
we'll sort of move on then. And, two of the stalwarts of the territory for, it seemed like centuries, the Crusher and Dick the Bruiser. I genuinely just don't know too much about these two guys, but, they were huge stars, huge draws for decades. And the first question really is, I suppose, the Crusher and Mad Dog apparently had issues with each other, but then had to work with each other for God knows how long, and just doing bloodbaths and cage matches all around and drawing a huge amount of money. Do you remember that in particular?
Not that they had any heat with each other. I've never even heard that, but possibly, that was before I was. I doubt if I was even in the business there. So I remember Tex McKenzie coming and remarking that Mad Dog and the Crusher did like $50,000 or $60,000 gate in Milwaukee, which in those days was incredible. It was just as a town show. I heard the story on that is that they were on TV and Mad Dog went to cut himself, and Crusher kicked him at the same time, and he just sliced his head like a melon, bled all over the place. The police people just the angle was made in heaven. True or not, I don't know.
I actually watched I think is it like a studio setup, isn't it? Was it TVC? I actually watched. I never watch wrestling matches really, like when I write these scripts and give you all the questions and everything. But I did watch that, and God, yeah, he was bleeding like I don't know what, the proverbial stuck pig, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Bobby Heenan played my job.
Sorry, a Bobby Heenan. Did you say?
Yeah, he'd cut right to the bone.
Oh, would he?
He didn't. He came back, if he cut, he'd be blood all over the place, and inevitably he'd end up going emergency, get stitches.
Red means green. That's what they used to say, wasn't it?
Yeah, he just didn't know when to stop.
Well, you must have wanted more green then, I suppose. Going back to the Crusher and the Bruiser, memories of both of them.
Didn't know the Bruiser too much. Met him a few times. He came, show up Chicago or big Minneapolis or Milwaukee, big shows. They got the tag belts. Well, what happened? I don't know what happened to. I forget what happened to Bastien. Bastien must have left because Crusher and Red took the tag belts after Hercules Cortez passed, and they brought Crusher. Evidently, that I don't know about, but the story goes, Crusher and Vern had been feuding yet again, and they needed somebody to come in and Vern didn't want to go on the road, and they were building Billy for a singles title, so they made a deal to bring Crusher back. He and Red got the tag titles instead of Hercules. So that's so I didn't know Bruiser a lot, but Bruiser was really alpha personality, real come in and just take over the locker room stories, no matter who was there, he would just be, and Crusher's just a great guy. He was, great to the young guys, and I was around him a lot. He would pick us up in Milwaukee or somewhere that we had, place, and we'd ride with him. He was always cool. Big Cadillac. He used to like to drink cold duck. It's a cheap.
It's just wine, that, isn't it? It's that white wine.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we had cold duck over here, like back in the 80s. Oh my God, that was
back in the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was before the days that supermarkets actually imported nice wine. At least in this country, we always had terrible wine until probably like the 80s, 90s.
That was his drink, cold duck. He liked his And I'm sure he could afford champagne. Whatever else.
Toward the end of your run in the AWA, did you ever notice that Vern was starting to get a desire to expand the territory a bit more?
Well, he had the Japan deal going, and I don't know. Well, probably, yeah. I probably to Montana and some of those there, but there was no population. Wyoming. Well, we went to Wyoming. We used to go to Cheyenne, Wyoming, out of Denver, which is pretty far to the west. And then after I was gone, they started going to Las Vegas, and I'm sure Los Angeles was or San Francisco was right behind there. So, and they were, he was AWA, had nothing to do with NWA. So this federation, the federation thing was pretty strong back in those days.
I'm going to give you some more of the AWA's sort of bigger characters, and this was more of like a WWA character that used to show up in Minneapolis territory, was Baron von Raschke. From what I understand of him, he's big character and everything, but he was actually really had some serious credentials in amateur wrestling, and according to him, even schooled Billy Robinson once.
I only met him a couple times. He was a real nice guy. Supposed to be real quick-witted, entertaining. Ken Patera called him the second funniest guy to Bobby Heenan. So, but I never got a chance to spend much time around him. Unfortunately, he seemed like a nice guy though.
Yeah, he's got like a documentary out now apparently that had like a 3-week limited edition run somewhere, and I don't even know how to get it on. I'll have to hunt it out maybe, but I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, I think we're about the same age. He's been up there. He had a good run. He was in Indianapolis and around there. And then it's been forever in Minnesota in the AWA. So he was around. I guess he was in New York. Was he in New York as well?
I think for a brief period. He may have been a manager there. I don't know. I don't know if that rings a bell, but I'm not the best person to ask on that. Well, for most wrestling questions, I'm not the best person to ask, but I think he was there for a brief period, yeah.
Well, you have the background. You have the history, so
Oh.
All I have is my memories.
Oh, my God, I tell you, your memory. Why you always, denigrate your own memory? You've got a great memory for all this. You know that. This is
Better Valentine's, that son of a... I'm trying to think of rotten things to say about him.
Yeah. So I hear that Greg
I
Valentine's
don't go that way.
Yeah, Greg Valentine's a really shitty Intercontinental champion. Do you care to comment?
Oh God. We had a long I both had it twice, I believe. And both worked with Tito and Pedro. A lot of Vince really established a bunch of heels there underneath Hogan to get his guys over. So Vince really put together a hell of a territory when he was, you could kind of go back and look back at the formation, the foundation, how he tried to put that thing together and how it progressed, later with Piper and Hulk and then the characters and stuff that he was able to, and how wrestling actually really changed under his under his guidance, under his rule.
Before I forget, we will do a Tito episode because people keep asking for Tito, and loads of people have sent in questions. We do the monthly Ask Muraco Anything, and people keep bringing up Tito questions, and I keep trying to save them for a Tito episode, but I promise we'll get there soon.
He's relevant. He's very active around the East.
He's got like a salon, I think. I think he runs and operates a salon.
It's been going for quite a while. I remember, over 20, 30 year in existence. It's been quite a while. Set his wife up. He did the assistant teaching. He's a smart guy,
Yeah, I'd love to get him for an interview as well. Maybe match you two up for one final showdown on Zoom.
Showdown, Tito Santana, Arriba.
Yeah. Was he a teacher? Was he a teacher before wrestling or during wrestling or after wrestling?
Yes, college. Merced Soli is his real name. College graduate. I think he's from that West Texas area with Hanson and Murdoch and Funk. I think that's where he went to school. He was a college football player. And then I think he played with Kansas City Chiefs, or made the team, or made a couple cuts or something. Was a pro football player for a short time. And he had a long run. You don't realize how long he was around in the WWF. Well, from the WWF there, when he was with Haystacks Calhoun and guys like that, when he was a tag team champion. All the way up until his Matador days. It's in and out of there for 20-something years. Just a fantastic run.
Yeah, I will promise we. Do you know what? After we do these, we do the next recording. I promise Tito will be on it, and we'll do a deep dive on Tito. I'll mention a couple more people. Did you have much interaction with the Blackjacks? I know they were also Indianapolis more based as well, but did you have much interaction when they came over?
Lanza, I worked with Lanza quite a bit, and he was his home. I think his home was in Minneapolis, so he was there. I don't remember if it was early or late in my time there, but I worked with Jack Lanza a bit, and then but Mulligan was pretty much Indianapolis, and I didn't know Mulligan until later. I worked with Jack Lanza. Lanza was easy, good worker.
Was Lanza working in a backstage capacity in the WWF in the late 80s when you were there?
Yes.
Yeah. What was his duties then? Was he just an agent, or was he more?
He was an agent, yeah. Like Tony Gurria, he was an agent. Slaughter, George Steele. They just they took on their agent roles. Carried finishes and stuff.
With Mulligan, one of the most famous things about him is that he's just like a stone cold badass. Just like there's so many stories of him just kicking the crap out of people, and I don't think I've ever heard a story where he's lost a fight. Have you? Maybe not any personal ones, but did you hear any over the years? More outlandish stories?
No, I never heard of him losing a fight. We were talking King Curtis, Kale. We were talking one time, we're discussing, the tough guys and guys that fighting, and he couldn't. Bob Wyndham, his real name is. He couldn't think of. He says, "Who's the guy used to hang them by the ankle? Hold them upside down by their ankles and stomp on their head." Till I said, "Oh, that's probably Mulligan." That's right, no, Jack Mulligan. Yeah, so that's that was Curtis's impression. He was a big rugged guy. I get knocked out Oli, I don't know how many times. But,
so you're a big fan of Blackjack then?
Oh yeah.
How was he in the late 80s WWF? Was it like around 86 he came in? How was he in the ring and hanging out with at that particular point?
Yeah, he was pretty much a homebody that time. But as far as a couple times I worked with him, he was, he was a piece of cake. There was no, he was just, for as big, as big and bad as he was in and out of the ring. In the ring, he was just, he was all business. Like this kid, like Barry. Barry was, he trusted, I did anything I wanted to Barry, and built him up in the end. But in the beginning, he was really he really trusted me. And I just mauled him a couple times on TV. And then, slowly brought him up to par, where he became a big card down there. And what a great worker he turned out to be.
Yeah,
just fabulous worker.
With the AWA, I noticed in your career that Vern would let you just go back to Hawaii for a week every so often. Was that the case? Was he trying to build up a relationship with Hawaii, or did he just know that you needed a bit of surf here and there?
Yeah, well, I would go. I'd take some time off. I think I went a couple of times. I wasn't there all that long.
2 years, maybe a little less.
Yeah. One time I went back on a vacation, and one time I was booked back there and missed my flight home, flight back to Minneapolis. So I don't think I got booked there anymore. when the talent got sent to Honolulu to work, I wasn't on the list.
Is that why you ended up in Roy Shire's territory then?
Yeah.
Oh, was that genuinely why you got fired for missing the flight?
No. I quit. I resigned. Vern couldn't understand why I wanted to leave all that money, but he never, he's used to growing up in the Midwest there. The hunting and the snowmobiling and the fishing and all that stuff, all that lake recreation.
You could have taken up windsurfing.
Probably. It's cold though. Those moguls are high in December.
You made a few appearances with the AWA shortly after leaving the WWF, including like Colonel De Beers. You wrestled for him. You wrestled Larry Zbyszko to a double DQ. How was that always just going to be a temporary thing? The AWA after you left the WWF. Sorry, it was about 89, I think this is.
Yeah, I was just kind of booking. Just I don't know how I ended up there, but I was doing some independent, just working around in independent places around the East Coast and getting ready to go to Japan. In fact, I was up there in Toronto, and I had to fly to Los Angeles, as I had to cancel out of 2 or 3 events I was up there because I had to go and get all my Japan papers and stuff in order. I had to go through Calgary and go to Los Angeles, get all my Japan papers and stuff. But that was just a temporary. I wasn't looking for a territory at that time.
No, I because I mentioned him and I like bringing him up. Larry Zbyszko. I think I've mentioned him to you before. I've spoke to him before. He's a highly amusing man. What did you? Just the man who can stall like nobody else. Larry as a wrestler and any stories you've got of him, WWF or AWA.
He was a funny guy. NWA. He came into Georgia when I first met him. Oh God, I think it was before his Bruno, before he split with Bruno, I believe. So he was one of the things where Vince Senior would farm out the guys to other territories and make up the difference in their paychecks or something, but he was there. Remember, he liked Frank Sinatra. Everybody was, it was the 70s, it was Rolling Stones and, that kind of stuff was going on, Beatles, and whoever, Janis Joplin. He was a Frank Sinatra, Count Basie. I'm a big band guy. He was funny. He had that whole East Coast thing going down, and he owned it, and turned out to be a hell of an interview guy. Turned out to be a hell of a hand. Had that big break with Bruno, and I don't know what happened. What bridge he burnt there, where he never got back. I guess he stayed in Bruno's camp when Bruno and Senior split and Junior split. That's the only thing I can imagine. That he stuck with Bruno's camp and was on the losing team.
Didn't you ever play golf with him? I don't know if you've ever played golf in your life, but if you've known Larry for any amount of time, you would have got an offer.
No, I never did. I'm not a golfer.
No, fair. Did you watch the Ryder Cup at least?
No.
Oh, dear. You see, we're both like sports fans, but we've got like no sports in common. Apart from UFC, we do watch UFC.
Yeah.
Did you catch the latest one?
Diaz and
Robbie Lawler.
Yeah. Well, those are old timers, huh?
Yeah, I know.
Lucky to get a payday. My grandson trains Max Holloway.
Oh, does
down
he?
In down in his dojo. Yeah, well, Max is his son, and my grandson's pretty good. Jiu-jitsu, surfer, student all the way around. That's my son's boy. The other two are good too, but this one he's so I guess Max brought him a gi and everything last week, and he works out. He's only 10 years old, but he works out, in the same dojo.
You weren't just going back on the UFC. You weren't impressed with Nick Diaz then?
Oh, he got the shit beat out of him. He's getting old, His attitude. That's the sport. Only attitude can only carry you so far. Then it's elbows and assholes. Just teeth and eyes and noses. It's all transgressed, dude. Started with the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the submission, then it became like a wrestler's, wrestler dominated, and now it seems like all the strikers have pretty much taken over taken the lead with it.
It's more interesting for me. I prefer the striking rather than the groundwork. But I will move on to the last couple of questions, and then we will shut down this podcast. AWA, it must have been clear by the time you were there for those couple of shots in 1989 that the ship was sinking, basically. What do you was it obvious to you when you were there, those few shots you were doing, and what ultimately do you think caused the AWA's demise, other than competition from Vince McMahon?
Well, that was it, right? Just McMahon. I was there. We were in a big show in Milwaukee. And Vern was there, and he was I said, I don't understand. He says, there's no loyalty. The boys there's no loyalty. And I just, it just struck me funny as the loyalty. I decided to get any, conversation with him or an argument or, dialogue. Just hearing that, and Jesus, a loyalty from, to guys that just, made you a living and at times treated you well, but also could treat you like dirt as well. That the big promotions and stuff. You got 2 weeks to pack up and go. Your family or not, you're done. You're done here in 2 weeks, and you're not making. I haven't got a paycheck for you after that. For the basic guys, though, your top guys might be a different story, and might finish up and be, dropping matches, putting guys over on the way out, and know they're going to another territory. But if you're in that, that bottom bottom 2/3. Well, you're done. You're over. I don't know how you can expect loyalty to that. I mean, he had a crew. They have their, their loyal people that live there and don't want to leave the area. So that creates your type of loyalty. But when guys come in to make big money, and to draw big bread, Wall McDaniels or superstar Billy Graham, guys like that, there's it's a fight, it's a lot of controversy there.
With the AWA as well, in the latter couple of years before they went under, did you notice when you turned up that you saw a lot of the same faces that you saw when you were there in the early 70s?
A few, yeah. I wasn't there that long. I just went through, I just kind of blitzed through 1 week. I didn't really pioneer that territory after. There were guys moving around with Kurt Hennig, and who had come from, I'd spent time with when he was just breaking in New York. Kurt Hennig, Rick Martel, Bockwinkel, a bunch of guys like that were, that were in the works there. So it had changed. Buck Zuma, a whole bunch of guys. It was new faces. I think Greg was running stuff. Brunzell, Ian Brunsey were there, but aside from that, Crusher Blackwell.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned Buck Zumhoff. I know one thing about him, and it's not a great thing at all. So yeah, he's a bit of a massive shitbag. I'll move on from Buck Zumhoff because we're going to do.
He's still in prison?
He must be still in prison, definitely. I mean, he must have got like 1,000 years. Wasn't he a paedophile?
Yeah.
It's funny, people only remember two things about him. Is either lately he was a paedophile, or that he used to carry a boombox to the ring with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only two things that I think people remember about him at all. Right, so I'm going to move on to the sort of main event of the show. We've done it before. We've done it on my show. We've done it on this show a couple of times. And it's the firing line. I'm going to give you some of the names that maybe, not your Dusty Rhodeses, not your Vern Gagne's, names that may not come up in like a first hour or two of a AWA conversation. I'm going to throw some at you. If you've got a story on them, throw it straight at me. And the first name I'm going to give you, if I can get that word out, is Dennis Stamp.
He was Dennis Buckle's ring partner. They had the ring. He was referee. He was from either University of North Dakota or up there. He went with one of the universities in North Dakota State. Good amateur wrestler, and ended up out at the farm there with Nick's brother Dennis, and then he ended up taking the ring around, and was a friend of mine. He was one of the few guys that was my age, so I would get to a town and especially for flying somewhere, I'd go with hang out with the ring crew. Some of the time, the other times we didn't, but Dennis was up there. A lot of the North Dakota or those icy cities we worked.
Moose Cholak.
I didn't know him well, but knew him out of Chicago. Huge guy, big guy, just lumbering. He was real, look. He's talking about movies and stuff. He's looking for the reality. Really intelligent guy, but just a freight train. He ran over Ernie Ladd twice. One night when Ernie used to put that big foot up to catch you off the ropes, went right over Ernie, right over the top of the foot, hit the rope, came back, he put the foot up, and went over him again. Just ran right over him. And it's like, it was just huge guy. Seemed to be wanted to be intellectual. Talked intelligently. Further the Moose, the whole gimmick and stuff that he wrote. But I didn't know him well. But he seemed friendly.
Please
I don't
tell
think anybody fooled me.
please tell me this, right? Moose Cholak must be the guy who wore the entire moose head to the ring.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Like who like did the moose nickname come first, or did the moose head come first?
No idea. He was way before. He was at back to Stan Kowalski and back to that era. He was a complete era way. Dick the Bruiser and all those guys. That 50s, early 60s, or 60s.
I think you've brought him up before, Red Bastien.
Oh yeah, one of the great workers of the business. One of the great. Could do anything. Guys, one of the, tremendous performer. Good guy. Ended up running the Cauliflower Alley Club just before his passing, and he was after he got out of the business. He married a lady from Texas who had some money, and all they did was travel around the world after that. And Red was one of the top talents. I remember I went to Fresno with him one night. Frank Nocsetti was a referee, and he had homemade wine. They'd give you these gallon jugs. And I was driving. I met Red on the way to Fresno, and he rode with me and we're drinking out of that gallon jug of wine. Oh my God, that stuff was it's got all sediment and stuff in it. You stay drunk for a week afterwards. It was crazy. But yeah, Red was a good time.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm actually going to harp on Red Bastien a bit more. Can you give us a bit more of his history? Because once again, I don't know too much about him. And where was his big territories? Was it the AWA?
He was. I think he came in his carnies. I think he came in the carny days. Worked the midways. I think he started. He's one of those guys like Ray Stevens or. He started way back when 14 or 15, 16-year-old. It just started before he got out of school, and just learned the business from the bottom up. Knew everything there was, to know about wrestling. So he ended up. What was he? He was in. He worked around. He was because he was a tremendous talent. They used him all in those upper United States there. Ohio, and those areas, Chicago's, Indiana. But he got to Indianapolis. He got to the job for Barnett, booking Australia, and he was down there. And I don't know how, when, where, the particulars of it, but evidently Mark Lewin screwed him out of the job and took over got the book from. Got the book from Red to take over the Australia, because he had a good thing going in Australia with Barnett.
Was King Curtis around helping Mark by any
chance?
Yeah,
well, Curtis and Mark were partners. They were always the good and the evil and the good guy. Curtis, believe Curtis was the good guy. He'd keep all the boys were happy. Everybody he'd keep everybody entertained. And Mark would come in for the hard clothes, the monies and the angles and who was going to get used and stuff. Yeah, they worked together well.
Yeah, I like how those two never saw a territory that they didn't want to steal at some point.
Yeah.
We'll move on then. You mentioned it before as well, Bobby Bruggers. I'll bring him up again.
Bruggers was a friend of Walt McDaniel's from the Miami Dolphins football team. And whether he wrestled in Florida or not, I don't know. But he was on that crew at the Vern's barn there, and he was part of that crew. Then he hurt something. He had legs, had some type of physical problem after that. Whether it was illness or a tear or hurt. He never progressed real far. After he worked maybe a year or two after that, did some Florida, did some stuff in Florida and Georgia. And as far as that was about the
This is a really big star, Dick Bayer.
Knew him from Hawaii. He was Dick Byers here, actually. I was just a young kid, but from down to the beach center, the Waikiki Beach and stuff, I don't think his family was real young at the time. Or even if he had a family back then, his boys I know were younger. He was around, good guy. And then went back and did that mask. He was a Dr. X Destroyer. So he was like the predominant masked man in internationally, because he had that in with Japan, with the tally-ho and all those. He was an amateur wrestler out of Syracuse, and what was he in Japan? Was he the Destroyer or Dr. X?
I think he'd be the Destroyer. I think
Destroyer. Okay. Well, he was like wrestling too. Well, he set the precedent for wrestling too. He would go everywhere with his mask on. He wouldn't, I guess, everywhere he went, in Japan, on the trains or the bus, got off the bus. So it was like Mil Mascaras. He was super conscientious, but he was, one of the top heels, or the top masked heel. I remember first it was like Zebra Kid, George Bolus. That's long before I got into the business. Then I remember Dick Byers, and I remember when I was a kid, he was managing Freddie Blassie over here in Hawaii, and then I guess he went to LA, got the mask. From LA, went to AWA, and continued with the mask, and was a big success, and just stayed with the mask. Never listened to that once he left Hawaii, and started the Destroyer and Dr. X.
I made a statement that it was the Destroyer, but I'm going to have to check that while I ask you this next question, or while you answer this next question. Was it Dick Bayer who had the all-time wrestling television ratings record? Was it Ricky Dozan that he faced in the early 60s in Japan? And apparently just TV ratings were absolutely through the roof for it.
Don't know. Could have been him. Could have been Blassie. Depends how saturated the TV was at the time.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have been the same. There we go. I've just Googled it from JWA, Ricky Dozan versus the Destroyer. So yes, I was actually writing a wrestling question. Did he have one more thing about him? Did he ever introduce himself to you as Big Dick Hertz?
No.
Okay, I'll move on then. Ramon Torres. I think we brought him up before, actually, didn't we?
Yeah. I met him. He came into Omaha as a vendetta for his brother. His brother died in the ring with Ox and the Claw, Tom Andrews. So he came in. Some people didn't like it at the time. I don't know, but he came in like an avenging match with, and then he filtered over. I guess part of the deal. He came to Minneapolis right after that. He worked out, and he and I tagged a lot and traveled a lot together. He was a good guy, older fellow. Because I was in my early 20s then. He'd been around. Part of the Torres brothers, Enrique, Ramon, and.
You're going to make me Google this one as well, aren't you? While you're thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll ask you this next one. I'll Google that answer. Bull Belinsky.
Oh, yeah. Frank Shields. Great bump taker. He took me under his wing when I first came into AWA. I didn't know anything. I got an apartment out by where he lived outside, maybe 10, 12 miles out of Minneapolis City. Seemed, and he was around. He kind of came in, and he came in after he and the Crusher were partners for a while there, as a bit, and then I don't know what happened, but the Crusher and Vern went into one of their fights, one of their feuds. So he picked up all the shots that the Crusher had, getting over Bockwinkel and all these other guys, but they ended up obviously changing the finish where he was putting him over instead of the Crusher going over. But he picked up all the stuff. Then he picked up the tag matches as he was Crusher's partner, and he picked up a bunch of stuff. And he was a handyman for Vern. He used to do all the carpentry and plumbing and all the stuff out at the ranch and out of Vern's house and stuff like that. He was a real handy guy.
It was Enrique Torres.
Oh, Enrique.
There you go. So it's Ramon, Enrique, and it was Alberto. Yeah, it was Alberto. Yeah,
Alberto. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a few more for you. So George Scrapine Gdaski, you mentioned him before as well.
Yeah, the referee.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would. He had everything. He'd collect old he'd sell old programs. He'd drive across all South Dakota, North Dakota in that cold, barren winter. He'd put cans of food inside of his inside his engine and drive and heat it. and it would heat the can, and he was frugal, lived on the road, must have made a fortune. He and Vern were always fighting over one thing or another, had his own ring. And, very rarely he didn't make a town. But if he was having trouble with the truck, it would turn, he would, never went to, well, one time when we wrestled on the grass. But aside from that, he was almost always there. Or I'll be there, I'm on my way, I'm coming. And he'd roll up about 8:30 and set up in front of the crowd and everything, But he was reliable, worked for years for Vern.
Were the referees always the ring crew as well?
Probably to a portion, because they're always on they're in all the towns. They had to be all the towns. I remember Ricky Hunter had the ring in Florida, and Kadaski and like Stamp and Buckle when they had for Vern. So yeah, they I guess it was Paul Pershman, Buddy Rose. He worked with Gdaski. I think George, he'd let him set up the ring. He'd set up the ring for Gdaski, and he'd let Paul go in and work out and take bumps and stuff. He was a hell of a worker before he even started working.
Hans Herman.
Didn't know him. Let's see. I'm thinking Hans Mortier. Hans Herman too. He was an older guy, and come from German. Very real funny, real aristocratic.
You said there was actually a German wrestler who was actually German. I think that might be a first.
I believe so. I believe he was. Yeah. And he didn't really play the gimmick up well. I did a little bit, a little Sieg Heil and stuff, but he wasn't. He was too old. He didn't want the heat. I guess he had, got good heat, different parts, when he was younger, in different territories. At this point, and he wasn't looking for, any kind of red, white hot heat to incite any riots or anything else.
We've mentioned George Scott before, I think. We can move on to the last two if you want, or anything else with George Scott?
No, none I can think of.
Okay. Rene Goulet.
Sarge, yeah. He was a heel. He hadn't developed that Legionnaire thing or anything yet. No, he was a baby. Was he a heel? No, he was still a baby face. At that time, he was a hell of a baby face. He was, he was a hell of a worker, period, He was a good baby face. Real Bockwinkel type style, abdominal stretch, and wrestling like that out of Montreal. Real good guy.
How was his agenting style in the WWF? Was he the biggest panicker in the back?
No, he was cool. Guys got along with him. He was always, level-headed. Didn't try to run the show, just, carry the message.
We'll give you one more, and then we will call it a day. Joe Scarpello.
Nice guy. Didn't know him well. He's one of those. I think it was Omaha. He moved over to Omaha. Little, you talk to him, you wouldn't think, he was a licensed 007 licensed killer. Just nice, big pair of hands and a little guy. He was, God, if he was 210 maybe, and then he was just Danny Hodge type deal, not even Danny Hodge kind of guy. Just wouldn't expect anything out of this guy. Nicest guy, sweet, congenial, talking, but evidently, he could rip some ears off.
Who did he attempt to rip some ears off of? Did you hear?
Well, they bring him in, the guys at the ranch and stuff. They do the thing, after they'd run 2 or 3 miles and 1,000 squats, 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 this, bumps back and forth across the ring again, and then they'd get down and do some amateur wrestling or something. He'd be one of the guys, Danny Hodge, him, some of those guys, that they weren't going to feed him fresh iron sheik or anything. They were just there doing Vern a favor, and Vern bring him up for a week or two and book him around the territory, make him a good payday, and they'd pay allegiance, as it were, to the Ganyas out at the barn. The guys coming up, they were legends that they knew, and evidently impressed to be trained by somebody like that.
Did Vern ever get his hands dirty and wrestle the prospects himself, or never?
Oh yeah, he was out there. He'd get out there. He'd everybody going through tricks and running, and he'd be doing the calisthenics. It'd be a place for him to work out. Get a different workout in. Vern was his athletic person. Obviously, he came from a football player, wrestler in high school and college, Olympics, I guess. It was all his career. He was, athletic guy.
I suppose, really, to close this then, AWA territory, I suppose, what did it mean to you for your career? Sort of sum up the AWA as an experience and shaping you to be the professional that you, I suppose, and main eventer that you would become and hone in maybe Florida and WWF later down the line.
It served as a real basis, real foundation. As far as my in ring work goes, there's so many people to train, that would help you. The guys back in those days, you'd go back and you'd get Stevens or Bockwinkel or Henning or Big K, and they'd diagram, take your match apart, or offer criticism. People were up for criticism in those, at that time from guys like that, and the critique was really helpful, and the timing and the stuff that they were able to convey. So it was a stepping stone for me, just and to be on that stage and to see what those type of crowds were like, because you big houses,
So when I said that where you main evented and then I mentioned 2 places, I should also say Roy Shire's territory. I should also say Japan. I should also say Georgia. I mean, did you you must have main evented every single place you went after AWA, surely?
Yeah, I guess kind of, yeah. Well, not so much. When I first went in for Shires and stuff, I wasn't, and then in the middle of that, I tore my other shoulder up. So, so that, and then I didn't really get my on top till after Florida, I don't think. And then Florida, then I left, and then Australia, San Francisco, back around Florida, and Georgia in those areas. But yeah, it's a little bit more time there. But I was lucky to come out of AWA smelling like a rose with the experience of being around all those top workers Bastine, Stevens, Buckle, on and on, Robinson, Gagne, on and on.
I'll tell you, so Ricky Steamboat and Greg Valentine ruined one shoulder in 1985. We'll blame Greg Valentine for the other shoulder as well.
Sure, yeah. He's a clumsy. He's always clumsy.
All right, so then, and what a better way to end the podcast, and I'll look at the right camera as well. So thank you very much for watching or listening, however you're digesting this podcast. The usual plugs, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, DonTheRockMorocco.com, etc. And if you'd like to buy books on wrestling that I've personally written, Owen, Hart and The Rock biographies, then go on Amazon and search for them. You will find them. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and we will catch you again next week. Cheers.
Aloha.
Aloha.